What's up, everybody? Hope you all are doing great. We're excited to have an old friend back here. Not that you're old, Brett, but just that you're a dear friend. Brett Queener back on the show, who I think was like one of our first 10 or 5 sessions over a year ago, Nolan.
Yeah, still one of the best performing ever, by the way.
And you brought me back. Normally people, before you're famous, I'm on and then they never have me back. So I'm not sure what it says about me or you guys, but
well, they can't tell us what really to do, so we just bring back everyone. So yeah, you're good. But Brett's amazing. He's been in this business for a very long time. Current board member at Pendo. We work together pretty closely, and is now 7 years as a managing director at Bonfire Ventures. And the VC community and world has changed a lot, and especially currently. So we're excited to have you back on for a bit and dig into some meaty topics. Let's kick it off.
So Brett, first of all, you guys just raised a $245 million new fund. What the hell are you going to do with all that capital?
Well, first of all, it's pretty exciting, right? Because the majority of venture raises by like 7 to 10 firms. And so there's been sort of this narrative, like these emerging, when you call new funds or smaller funds or focus funds, emerging, the death of the emerging, these VCs are all going to peter away. And so I think it's reassuring that our LPs and new LPs were like, we really like what Bonfire's doing. Look, we're going to do what we've always done, right? We invest at the seed stage. We're going to find great founders. We're going to write sizable checks and do their seed rounds. And we do classic seeds where there's product and market and there's revenue, et cetera. And, we're going to go hands-on, with these founders and be as supportive as we can be. There's no different. It's the same thing. There's more money. We've got, that gives us probably an opportunity to bring on a couple more people to deploy some checks. Because at some point, if you are as helpful as we are, most seed stage firms roll off at some point. So you're not on everybody's board. The challenge with our founders when we try to roll off, they're like, dude, where are you going? No. You need to stay here and help sort of guide the company. So same thing. I think the big thing really wrestling and thinking through, we've always invested in application software companies. And I think the big thing, for somebody who's been in software for 30 years is, well, what the hell is an application software company today? Right? Since last we spoke was how long ago? 9 months ago? How long was it?
Like 18 months?
18 months. So I've done a lot of writing on this. People can go to my Queener Substack if you want. I basically write when I have a lot of anxiety and I can't name that anxiety. And then by writing it, it's my own therapy. And then hopefully that helps others with their anxiety. But in the last 18 months, the world has fundamentally changed in terms of what is a valuable application, software application, and then what is a viable software application company. And so that's kind of exciting.
So I want to talk about that because, to your point on like, oh, it's kind of like the same, we're doing the same stuff, but the world is totally different now. What I'm seeing as I'm also working with pre-seed and seed founders is that there's a ton of hype. It's hard to figure out what's real and what's overpromised. The amount of money going into like a pre-seed company, I just heard yesterday, a company raised 20 million on 100 posts on an idea. And so I'm like, it does feel completely different, or it feels like maybe we're repeating some of the same mistakes in the, the part of the 2021 era. What's your take on where things are today?
Look, I think the market is definitely frothy, especially as it relates to AI native companies, because those select few that get it right, they can grow a lot faster than, the sort of pre-AI SaaS generation of companies. I think the challenge is some of this premium is a bit silly because we're talking about an AI company versus a non-AI company, and everything's going to be or is soon an AI company. That's like saying, 20 years ago, like, wow, the SaaS companies got this premium and the on-premise software companies didn't, right? And so in my mind, some of this premium, I think goes away. That being said, what is interesting is the potential growth you can have if you get it right with this next generation of products can be far faster for a seed stage company than before. And so if we think about ZERP era, the whole thing was like, oh, let's get this thing going. Let's raise the seed. We'll get to $1 million ARR and we'll raise it 100 posts. And there we've got market fit and everything. And we don't have shit at $1 million. And there's those companies that scaled, but most of them prematurely scaled and they raised a bunch of money and had too much money too early. And they weren't forced into very hard, difficult constraint decisions. And now, our general guidance at Bonfire, we invest, is that companies should get to at least $3 million in revenue with their seed stage financing, at least a full cycle year on retention and churn. And in fact, my recent ones that I've been investing in, I'm almost saying, let's get to 5. Why can't you get to 5? And the reason I say this, and this is the person that wrote the article that said triple, double was misguided for many. But what is possible with AI software products, if they're not Vibey or bullshit, there was an interesting article published yesterday around the AI SDR company that perhaps wasn't doing as well.
I want to talk to you about that.
As one thought, which I'm not. I wasn't surprised by that because I had yet to find a successful deployment of an AI SDR tool anywhere, right? The reality, the issue we had using Outreach and SalesLoft was we took messaging from marketing who cared about what you were saying in email marketing, and we handed it to 22 Lax Bros, and they send you sequences like, dude, are you breaking up with me? And like, that was the way for me to engage in sequence 3. And then we just automated that. So like, if you automate stupidity, you're going to get, turns out, not better results. Put that aside. But if you deliver a product to somebody with AI, and when I think about AI, and I read a lot about this, is that if I really think about my career and the applications that I've been involved with, I was an executive at Siebel, which was the fastest growing company in the on-premise era, and then Salesforce, the fastest growing company in the on-demand world. The products didn't fundamentally change. They were CRUD databases where like you enter data in and then maybe you pull data out. The problem with the cloud is APIs integrations were easy. It was easy to go customize. So you were using one app that somebody was customizing every 30 days and changing. And then for a given role, you were using 9 apps to do your job. So you're just trying to get your job done. And you have these 9 CRUD apps that you're hunting and pecking across. And none of them actually make you better at your job. And none of them actually help you do your job. They might inform you, there might be analytics, et cetera, but like being that much more effective, getting time back, et cetera, isn't true. And what's very interesting when I think broadly of the AI opportunity is that for the first time, we're bringing intelligence and reasoning into a product, where a product more closely approximates what if you could hire a super clever person who worked 24/7 and didn't say negative things about you in Glassdoor and asked you what parts of your job they could do for you and made you more effective. If you deliver that product to people and they look at it, and I call it the what the fuck moment. Prospects look at that and go, wait a minute, does that work? That can't work. And you're like, no, it does work. And if it actually does work, there's far less agita. If you really think about the last 30 years of a playbook I would give somebody, and Kelly's seen me in board meetings where Brett has an answer on marketing or SDR or success or account managers or hunter farmer doesn't make sense. All of that mess that you need to manage and get right is directly tied to how much friction there is between the product you've sold and the value somebody gets. And these next generation of agentic products actually add a ton of value. So like, how many SEs do I need? How many like value selling playbooks? What ROI calculator? Like, do I need 30 CSMs to go in and be like, oh, you're red, yellow, or green, and you're not really taking advantage of this product? Like, does this product work or doesn't? And so what I'm saying is, if you can build a product like that and actually delivers real value, you can grow a lot faster. And you can sit in product market fit land with smaller groups of teams without having to go like raise the money and go hire 20 salespeople and then look at a ramp model and you look at it on a spreadsheet and it works, but it rarely does out of the gate, right? Because that's what you think you need to grow. So, look, it's definitely hypey right now. There's a lot of money being thrown around. I think we're repeating the mistakes of the past. But what we try to do is really go look and figure out, is this a founder who is world-class, who is maniacal, who is going to work at the pace and speed that's required now? And do they have a unique insight around a customer problem that they're sitting in, that their customers are giving them the license to basically deliver as much software as that customer wants as quickly as possible? And if you can find that, we can build interesting companies.
Hey, Brett, do you care? I mean, do you accent or bias more on first-time founders or repeat founders where they've done this, they've learned, they're coachable, you have more confidence in that? Do you care one way or the other based on your experience?
I think the AI moment makes that question a harder one to answer. I definitely like people that have done startups before, whether they were super successful or failure, and they learned about the mistakes they made as leaders. If somebody has built successful companies, there are things that I don't have to teach them, like how do you build a culture, how do you hire people, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, the challenge is if your success was tied in a prior generation of SaaS where there was a playbook to go run, you may rest on your laurels and go execute the same playbook you did before, as opposed to attack things from a first principles perspective. But if you find me a former founder who's had a level of success, who has grokked what this AI moment means and can communicate how they're going to do stuff differently and how excited they are about this, ding, 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 ding. The challenge is, when you think about these deals that are being done pre-seed at whatever, et cetera, those tend to be second or third time founders, right? And so I think there's a challenge on those around getting at a price point.
There's a premium.
But you pay what you get for. But look, if somebody said prior experience and his work and brings a team of people that they know how to work together through thick and thin, that's very helpful. There's less therapy that, a VC needs to provide. That being said, if I think about the last 2 out of my last 3 investments, first-time founders, first-time software founders, but live in the issue, know it well, have super technical talent, and move at a speed that most companies don't know how to move at. Like the speed, and this is what I published earlier this week, called The Change Economy. The speed at which you need to execute now, people aren't fathoming. They're just not fathoming to be successful. And I think I just had a call with the founder who's a second-time founder, late 40s, early 50s. And he was like, have you seen Lovable.dev? I'm like, yeah, I know about Lovable. Like, why? Well, my 52-year-old sales executive who was at Siebel and Salesforce and others was working with a customer. We're trying to price this agent that basically replaces all of this claims work that they have to do in CPG that requires humans. We didn't know how to price it. So he himself went into Lovable.dev and said, can you just build me an app that takes these inputs and the rest of it, can I share with the customer, them to go put it in? And then it presents for them the ROI over time, et cetera, et cetera. And it did it in 5 minutes. And it's a pretty app. He's not dev. That's the world we operate in now.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Your workforce is your organization's greatest strength and often its largest single expense. But without the right tools, understanding where your workforce spend is going or how it impacts your bottom line can be a challenge. That's where Planful comes in. With Planful, HR and finance teams get the clarity they need to make smarter workforce decisions, gain real-time visibility into workforce fluctuations, forecast with confidence, and adjust talent acquisition plans collaboratively based on costs today and into the future. No more guesswork, just data-driven insights to help you plan with accuracy. And the best part, Planful is fast and easy to implement, so you can be up and running in weeks, not months, with minimal IT support. Plus, as your company grows, Planful grows with you, providing endless runway for strategic workforce planning at any scale. Ready to take your workforce planning to the next level? Join over 1,500 organizations already using Planful. Visit planful.com/heretics to learn more.
I must admit, I used to believe that AI didn't actually exist in recruiting or HR. That is until my friend Heather Doche, who leads talent at Signalfire, told me to check out Metaview. I got into the product and was like, wow, AI actually does exist in recruiting, and this product is sick. Metaview is the world's #1 AI scribe built specifically for recruiting. Their AI records and transcribes hiring conversations, like intakes, interviews, and debriefs, then provides perfectly summarized notes of everything that was discussed. I've seen firsthand how tough it can be to extract consistently high-quality data from candidate conversations. I've been in debriefs where interviewers told us about their feelings instead of what actually happened in the interview. And I've seen VPs and CEOs block hires because they didn't learn anything from skeleton scorecards. Metaview changes everything. With perfect notes from every conversation, your people can focus on creating a human connection with candidates, and they can save time on the busy work of cleaning up notes after every interview. But it's so much more than just a time saver, because perfect notes means perfect data. For every candidate and every pipeline, hiring teams can make confident, informed decisions, and talent leaders can finally take control of the interview process. Metaview covers all your compliance needs, works with all your existing tools, and takes less than 3 minutes to set up. Join talent leaders at organizations like Brex, Deal, HelloFresh, and Quora, and check out Metaview. Head over to metaview.ai/heretics to talk to one of Metaview's product experts. Tell them that me and Kelly sent you. Or you could just go to their website and get started for free. You'll be up, running, and AI enabled in minutes.
What the weird thing then is that all software companies, to some extent, how we run them, how we market, how we onboard people, how we train them, how we talk to customers, we're all tied to a world in which our product kind of changed once a year. Whether it was Pandemonium or Dreamforce, there was the big thing. But if your product can and should change in value every 30 days, holy shit, you don't have time to like think about your long-term product release roadmap and then do the, like all of this stuff changes. And I've published a lot, and it's interesting. This article I published this week, I got the most sort of response from people like, absolutely, this is the issue. And what I think what it speaks to is like, oh my God, we have to fundamentally rethink about how we run these companies. And what's interesting, back to your question, Kelly, is a first-time founder goes, well, of course, why would I? This is how, what do you mean? Of course, this is how you do it. Because they start with, I'm shipping very fast, and then they think about all the other processes tied to that. Whereas if you've been running a SaaS plug for 20 to 30 years and you've been successful at Salesforce and then this SaaS company and this SaaS company, you now go, oh shit, my assumptions are all wrong.
Yes. And I asked that for that reason. Like, I'll be honest, even for myself, right? We're old and crotchety now. We've been living in this world for years. Like, I'm even going through a transition to think differently. And, it's kind of like a fresh tablet is kind of an advantage.
It's an advantage, although I think the fun thing is we know the old, and we also know all the pain with the old. We know the ease, it's structured, but we also understand all the pain. So we can understand and go, okay, if it's this, we can go, oh, okay, we can remove all of this pain. But yes, like if you're, Kelly, like here's the interesting question when you're hiring people. Historically, what do we do? Oh, they've been there, done that. They know the playbook. Okay, but what if the playbook's different? And so the interesting question when we start to look at hiring people for roles Experience is definitely interesting. So they're not completely lost. But the ability to be flexible, understand a clear set of priorities, and quickly iterate and be okay with fail. Like that didn't work. Because the weird thing, like if you think about product and dev right now, you could spend 9 months trying to get it right, and then you go build it, or you could just build 5 versions and be like, okay, here's 5. What do you think? Oh, those 4 are shit. Throw them out. Let's go. Like, what is that equivalent for how we evaluate talent? It's the interesting thing about LLMs or AI, which is liberal arts actually kind of really matters now for kids.
It's like the one skill that's going to remain.
Well, because if you've used deep research, have you used deep research yet? Either of you?
I have.
Your ability to, because now you can talk to it in longer form. So it's longer prompting. But if you learn how to ask what you're asking for, which is like the idea of like, I'm thinking of this problem, I want to frame it appropriately, then it's very good. And so it's a really interesting thing when you're looking to hire people at all levels. What are the core criteria we're looking for? I don't have the answer yet, but it's not been there, done that.
Yeah. And on the other side, sorry, before we leave this, to, I guess, give us some credit, where we do have the advantage is where all the AI articles, podcast, whatever you want to talk about it, are saying that what will not replace is leadership and EQ for right now, and these things that I think will become more important.
Yeah, because how do you do leadership in a world of so much iteration, right? And how do you get people to live in that change and iteration and be comfortable with it? And then how do you manage and drive those people effectively? Absolutely. Like I would argue that leadership becomes more important. The great thing with AI and tools is it becomes easier. Like I think I don't know if I'm giving this example, but like when you get to be a leader in a company and you go to your staff meeting and you're looking across the room and you're trying to figure out why your peers why marketing or sales and success don't seem to get along. Like I can write an agent in 5 minutes today that looks across all of our support tickets, Jira, and I can say, okay, your agent, your job is to go look at customer success and just tell me like what are their top issues, okay? And then I can write an agent and say, well, what is product doing? What are they building and prioritizing? And then I could say, I want those 2 agents to meet and tell me where they're not getting along and where's the biggest disconnect and where are the areas we could drive alignment. I could build that in like a day. And as an executive, I could have sent to me Friday about like what's going on in the org. So as opposed to have to dress up like undercover boss and pretend you're an IC to figure out what's going on. Like it's
secret shopper.
Yeah, secret shopper.
So Brett, I have a working hypothesis that I want your feedback on that I thought, like as I was reading the Change Economy article, I thought you were going to hit on, but you didn't. So to the question of talent, I'm seeing like the biggest thing I'm seeing is teams are getting younger. And I feel like we just exited this era to where like it was nice to have a lot more experience and kind of people who had been around the block. And now there's a reversion. And I think the reversion is because the younger generation is more AI native. And they're more comfortable with the speed of iteration, which you hit on very clearly in your article. The thing that's coming to me, though, is venture is a huge driver of hiring in our economy. And so if it's getting younger and we need fewer people to actually build the thing, are we going to see like an extinction event for employees that have been around in venture that like are not like becoming more AI native and getting with this new world?
Look, I think teams are younger, which is great, et cetera, there's still an importance of direction, intentionality, and picking our true north. Now, we may not have a 4-release roadmap, but a 1-release roadmap, but there's still an opportunity for driving alignment. I do believe that if you are an executive at some level and you're not using the AI tools every day in your own life and the rest of it, I think you become obsolete.
I think it's fast.
Hey, look, it's no different. Like the people that use laptops versus not. I remember bringing in client server computing. And if somebody was like, no, I want my green screen deck minivacs, good luck. I think the more interesting question that I look at as it relates to hiring in HR is that it's less so about, look, everybody needs to understand how to leverage AI to make themselves far more effective. Because at the end of the day, people hire employees, they spend Y to get X unit of output. And it's very clear for those that are clear in leveraging AI, they're more productive. And so whether you're an IC or a first level or second level or a manager or the rest of it, if I'm going to compare you at any level, you're going to be less productive. Sorry, you just are. So you're going to be less relevant. I think the more interesting question is AI automates a lot of grunt work. And a lot of our roles when we hired people into functions at junior levels would do the grunt work. And in doing the grunt work, they would kind of learn, appreciate the craft of the job. And then we would move them up to higher level work. If we've now removed that grunt work, then what is that entry level class of people in? There's an argument that says there are less of them. There's an argument that says the younger people that we would hire more AI native and they actually can come into a company at a step function higher. I don't have the answer to it, right? But I think it's something we're wrestling through, right? Like if you came into sales engineering or you were an SDR, you would come in, you do a bunch of research on companies, you'd pick accounts, you do the rest of it. Like AI is going to do that for you, right? If you came in as a junior SE, you came out of whatever services, and you would put the demos together in the demo environments. Like you don't have to do that shit anymore. You would answer all the RFP templates. You don't have to do that anymore. You would know everything about the AI, your architecture, and answer security questions. Well, somebody can just ask about that. So then the question is, what is that person now doing? That's the bigger question that I wrestle and think through. Because we don't want just an organization of top heavy, all super expensive, needy people, right? It's always good to have people. I think that's the interesting thing. I don't have the answer to, but I do believe, just like each of you, when you use AI individually, you are more productive. And so then therefore, how do we look at that in terms of we're bringing people in to do roles and the rest of it? So that's how, I don't know, long answer to a short question, but it's par for the course.
I think that will be interesting, Nolan. I mean, and both of you before it's a try. It's the same thing with kids in school, because we had to go through hell to learn things and practice and write stuff down. They don't really have to do that anymore. So are they actually learning these things and retaining it versus having a shortcut? It's a similar type of thing. And I think that's going to change a lot in the way organizations look, how they're run. And I don't think we're really going to see that, I would say, until about 15 years from now.
It might be sooner. But in terms of education, look, I think most of the education that Kelly and I went through, Nolan, you're a little younger than us, or a lot, was a lot of rote memorization. And it was far less problem solving. It was I didn't do problem solving until business school, which was case management. But even that was silly. I was like 27. It was like, you're CEO of $1 billion company. What would you do? And then you left business school thinking you deserved that job. And then you were somebody's like assistant staple child, right? It wasn't really good for, but
You alluded to 11x earlier, so let me catch the audience up on the drama of that from yesterday. So we've talked about 11x on the pod. 11x has two products, of which they're basically AI SDRs, and they had raised two successive massive rounds of financing within months of each other late last year, and there was this kind of this undercurrent discussion happening amongst the go-to-market community that I'm homies with, that was like, I don't know how real this revenue is. Like, I haven't seen people like really getting value out of this product. And so yesterday, there was an article that dropped of which accusing 11x of faking the revenue by essentially signing customers up for a 12-month contract, but giving them a 3-month out in the contract, and recognizing that as a full 12 months of revenue, but many of those customers are actually leveraging the opt-out clause and dropping out. This ties actually to your Change Economy article, to where you talk about selling the roadmap. And the selling the roadmap thing is like, I think we did this at Carta. We would always try and sell like a little bit ahead, but if you sold too far ahead, you would lose trust with the customer. And the customer would feel like you sold them a bill of goods, which would then tarnish your brand, which could potentially be what's happening here. So I guess like the question for you, Brett, is this is not just about 11x. This is about a lot of the hype that I am being sold as a potential buyer of AI. And even you, like you're talking right now about like all these agents that are doing these amazing things. I've experienced some of it, and I am very like techno optimist. I still feel like there is so much over promising. And so how do we think about this when you're evaluating companies? Like, how do you figure out what's actually real?
So, look, I'm in the venture community. I'm a former sales and marketing practitioner. I'm not going to shit on 11x. I think the reality is when we're going into AI and delivering agents, you have to be careful trying to ascribe old SaaS metrics to it, which is they were selling a product that promised value, that they had a pricing metric based on consumption, and at the end of the day, calling something an annual contract. When you have an out, that's not ARR. They should have looked at the business in terms of monthly revenue, and was the monthly revenue looking at the cohorts to understand if the product was working. If I look at 11x, there are three things that I think about and these are attributes to be careful about, which is one, what's the promise you're making? And the promise they were making was a group that hired a bunch of SDRs that were frustrated that it wasn't working, but they weren't digging into why it wasn't working, which was really that your core underlying messaging is irrelevant. 70% gets caught in a spam filter, and you haven't been able to send something that somebody would be interested to engage with you. And not understanding that when you're going outbound versus inbound, they know nothing about you. And the idea that somebody would take a phone call or respond to an email, it has to be really fucking good. And I think there was this proportion of like, you've hired all these people and you can replace all of these employees out of the gate with this because it's going to be more effective. That's a big promise. And then secondly, does the product work or doesn't? So one is, what's the promise? Two, does the product work or doesn't? I mean, the reality in an AI, like, the good thing is, like, it should just work or not. There should actually be less hype. You should go understand, does this work or not? So those are the things to wrestle through. The reality with AI, though, you have to be careful, is that when I look at investing, I'm trying to figure out, the cool thing at seed now is normally I would get like a half-baked product at seed, right? Like, here's the product. I'm doing this wedge solution. Here's what it kind of is. And when I raise my seed, and then my A, and then my B, then I'm going to have a fully fledged product because I'm going to build out these screens, and then I'll have a great product. And the playbook used to be, I'll have a good success team, so like customers will love us until they love the product. At seed now, when I'm investing in companies, like, show me a product. Like, look, if I can go unlovable and build a pretty good app in like, I don't know, like 3 days or 2 days, like, you should have a pretty kick-ass product. And you should be able to give me 10 customers that I could speak to who think this is amazing. Or not. Because the other challenge, and Sam Lesson or others write in this, called Vibey revenue, which is there are a lot of enterprises right now. So that's one. And then the two, what I have to think through when I look at it is, how easy over time is it for somebody else to just go build what this customer's doing, this investment's doing? And so then I start to look at, do they have unique insights around that person's pain or that industry they're targeting? Is there a metadata moat? Like, is the idea that if I build enough and I'm doing enough jobs, become a compound start quicker? And then is there something interesting from a data? Are you gathering data such that if you can use off-the-shelf LLMs and you train it on that data, if you have more data, is the intelligence layer of your product going to be smarter than somebody coming out of the gate? So I have to look at that. Because the challenge we have right now is that it used to be, we were like, we only invest when there's 500,000 in revenue. People are like, oh, that's a high bar. I don't really know. Like, we got 100K revenue. You should invest now. And we're like, look, if you got to get to 3 million in revenue, you're 100K. Dude, you got like 6 to 8 months more of figuring stuff out. But now there are companies that can get to like 1.5 million of revenue out of the gate. The challenge to figure out, is it Vibey or not? Because you do have large enterprises who are throwing money at AI to basically figure out if there's automation. And the reality is, unlike 11x, there are areas where definitely it's better. But I don't know how valuable it is until I go look at it. And what I don't know is, but there's 4 or 5 other companies right now that do the same thing, right? And so, look, I think on 11x, I think the challenge is they came out with the big premise that we are going to steal all this money from payroll. So that sounds exciting. And I think they misrepresented their customer traction from a love perspective. And I don't think people did enough research, right? My comment on Twitter was like, I don't understand the issue here. Like, did somebody not go talk to 10 customers? Right? Because I was the first person to get my companies to go try this stuff. And across the board, they were like, I think it got worse. Because they didn't address the fundamental issue was like, who are you talking to? What do you know about them? And have you really thought through, is your messaging correct around this is something that they should go look at because it's meaningful to them? And 95% of the emails you get from outbound engines don't hit that, right? It's the delete, delete, delete. And so, and the ones you do, I'm a weird VC. I'll respond to cold founder email. I'm like, look, if a founder takes the time to write something, but I get 100 of them a day, and I just go through delete, 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 delete. It was cold outbound. I don't feel like I need to respond to them. But there were 3 or 4, and I'd be like, that seems thoughtful. They've done some research about me. They know what I care about. That seems thoughtful. There's enough info. I'll talk to the founder. Sure. Like, why not? So that's the issue with 11x, right? And so I think the key is, ironically, in AI, while it's Vibey now, there's nowhere to hide quickly. The product either works or it does not. And then the roadmap thing I talked about was, what is a renewal? It works great. Wonderful. Somebody else comes along and says, hey, you can use mine. And in the past, it would be like, well, that's a lot of change management. I'm going to have to like turn this off. It's 6 months to deploy this. Or God forbid, if you're an enterprise, I got to hire Accenture and pay $1 million to design scope. God, AI is coming for professional services. That's a topic for another day, right? I mean, the weird thing, like if you think about it, like what do professional services people do? I'm going to charge you $1 million to deploy Salesforce. Well, Salesforce has a metadata. We know what the objects are. So we know what they're trying to do. Couldn't we just use an agent to ask the customer, like, hey, what do you want to do here? What do you want to do here? What do you want to do here? Oh, upload your Docker, how it's special. Couldn't an agent just go configure that? Like, do I really need kids rolling off a bus and from Minnesota? No, I don't. So that's a whole separate conversation for another day. But I think very quickly you're going to be like, does the product work for me? Yes or no? And, is it doing more for me over time? Because that's kind of the really exciting thing I'm seeing right now with my founders is companies are like, wow, this is awesome. Hey, I'm using this software and this software and this software. Can you do this as well?
Yeah.
The reality is, if I don't need to go build and design a bunch of CRUD screens, the answer is hell yes. Of course you can. And so with a really weird challenge I have as an investor is, in the past when someone said, I'm going to go build product B and C, and I'm talking about NRR out of the gate, I'm like, whoa, dude, get to product 1. And now I'm like, they're asking you to do that? Go do it. It's a land grab. Like, you need to become strategic within that buyer. Like, they're going to try to consolidate their purchase of software down to the fewest level of helpful software applications offering AI. And that should be you versus someone else. And so that's it. It's a hard challenge for founders in terms of prioritizing, what is GA of a kick-ass product 1, and what does that look like before I go to product 2 and product 3?
I have not heard that take, and that's a completely different shift than the traditional VC advice. But the point I want to really hit on right now is what you're describing as you assess a company is exactly the things employees should be assessing. So, right, let's go through your list. Number 1, the first thing is the founder. The second thing is the product. Does it work?
By the way, the founder, I've worked for 2 billionaires. They were crazy. Okay. One was kind of bad crazy. One was good crazy. Okay? No names. And they have to be a little crazy because they're basically saying, I'm going to create an iconic company and go through the thicks and thins, and I'm going to be able to get more customers. I'm going to be able to get better employees, et cetera, than anybody else. And so you have to really assess that. And my best founders, I'm like, they're crazy. And then I really have to figure out, like, are they good crazy or bad crazy? Because good crazy I can deal with. So it's kind of maniacal, one. So that's the first thing, is this founder. And then second, like, does the founder have a unique insight, or the people that, or the team around a problem that they're solving that somebody really cares about, that really needs to be solved fundamentally better? And so much of the issue of SaaS for the last 20 years, they're all iterations on the last one. And they will just hire better go-to-market people, and they'll rotate from this startup to this startup to this startup, right? Third is, from a product perspective, can they leverage AI to solve a broad enough problem for this company where, for the people they're serving, or the functions they're serving, and I make it two different, because the people serving is, they're still employees. You give an application, make the employee more effective. In the organization, I may need less employees doing some of the work because they'll do it on my behalf. Is there enough there that you can build an important company? And then I think we should always look at is, what's the role you're taking depending on the level where you feel that you're able to do great work. And then ultimately, who do you work for? Right? Who do you work for? Are they going to be somebody that you do great work and they take all the credit for? Or are they going to be somebody who's tough on you privately, and as you do great work, just talks about how amazing you are, and at some point decides maybe you should get promoted to be their peer because they don't care, right? And then I think this is really hard to win in this era, remote. I just think it's really hard.
And you mean specifically, you think people should be building in the office?
I think wherever possible, if you can work with your peers in an in-person setting and iterate and riff on stuff and learn, because you think about this iteration loop. And so I know people say it's otherwise, and there are special companies can do it, but the learning loops of what's working and not learning, working, when you're remote, that's just hard. And so at a very minimum for early stage startups, I generally, and others disagree, I will invest in a remote company. The last 3 or 4, I'm like, get an office. The core team we're building. Now, a lot of them are in San Francisco, so you can't afford, unless you're getting amazing ASPs. You can't build a massive company. I don't know if you need to build a massive company. You can do more with less. At least the core of the first crew should be in office. On a go-to-market team, early on, I like them with the executive because I want the executive sitting in the revenue, the founder understanding, et cetera. Because the interesting thing, if you've built sort of this really amazing product, selling's a lot easier. So you don't need all like the Miller-Hyman pink sheet, blue sheet values. Like, you don't have to do like these mind tricks. You're like, hey, I built this thing because this was the huge pain. Do you have this pain? We really do. Can I show you something that I think fundamentally changes it? Yeah, show it to me. Here's this. And somebody goes like, what is that? Does that work? It does. Now, here's the interesting thing. I do have companies that go, what is it? $200,000. Sign now. I'll give you a 2-month out. Now, for those companies that give the 2-month out, I know for the customers they're having conversations with that the product will work for them. I'm just skipping 60% of the sales process unnecessary. But the product has to work for them within reason. If you try to cast too wide a scope, all you've done is taken your engineering team and just they can't go to sleep. You don't need that pressure. That's why I don't really love this. But if your product works pretty well, like, look, try it. And in that world, what we're saying is go use the product because we know it'll work. And we know when you use it, you're like, holy shit. And then you're not going to exercise the out, which is the inverse of what happened with 11X.
Yeah, and that's the piece for employees that I think people really need to underscore in today's market is the things we talked about, but then there needs to be a holy shit moment with the product. And you as an employee need to be like, holy shit, like this is going to be big.
And you kind of need to care about it. Like if you're going into a marketing job and you don't care what your company solves, don't take that job. And what I try to do, and it doesn't happen for lower level employees, but any executive that's being hired, the CEO gets mad at me. I'm like, have you talked, as a VP of sales, VP of what is success, or VP of product or marketing, I'm like, or R&D, like, have you talked to 3 of the customers? They're like, no. I'm like, how are you? Wait a minute. And I look at them like, why would you take this job? Now, nominally, I'm trying to help recruit this person, but like, why would you take a job with a company that you haven't spoken to 2 or 3 customers and understand what they think about the company and listen to them rationally, but really listen to how they emote about the company? Because it's the emotion that you understand, and then understanding how they're delivering against that emotion, that's something you can build a company around. And you use the 11X example. The issue is they made big promises. People didn't really buy in. So you made this big promise, you didn't deliver. And the issue there is you made a big emotional promise. People got super excited, and then you didn't deliver. So that fall from grace is much faster. And so I would just make sure you are talking to customers. I would go use deep research, right? Go form your opinion. That's how I think about it.
Sage advice, as always, Brett. Thank you so much for the time, brother.
All right, Nolan. I'll see you.
HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the things.